Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. We've been talking recently about the release of all these UFO documents, and basically was the jumbo package of things that we've already received in the past. I mean, is it instructional? Okay, perhaps, but there's really nothing there that's not disclosure, and we're never going to get disclosure. As I've been stating recently, we're just not going to get it. I get my hopes up high, right? Sometimes, on the verge of those documents coming out, my hopes are all up. Right. But then it all gets dashed in the end, just like it always does. Seeing is believing. Until we finally get this, right? Until something finally gets released by the government, I'm not going to believe that we're ever going to get disclosure, not willingly. There's just not going to happen. So today we're going to talk about the reasons. I think everyone needs to. You deserve to know why this is being kept from you, right? That's what you need. Everyone should know why you're not going to get this information. And we're going to go through various different reasons here. I put together a list based on some of the reasons that were discussed by the late Stanton Friedman in books like this, Flying Saucers and Science. He talked about the reasons in that book of why they're keeping this a secret, and among others. I mean, there was different researchers over the years have posited different sorts of ideas on why the government continues this cover-up and why we're not going to get actual disclosure. We're not going to get it, folks. I hate to say that, right? But here's the good part about it is that we are getting stuff through the public, within the public, right? Stuff from the public is showing us more than anything from the government has ever shown us, right? We have the Las Vegas alien incident. No one's debunked it. Nobody can. They ignore that evidence. So it's out there. Over time, more and more people will become aware of this. They'll understand what it all means, what it represents, and more and more people will know about it. There's so many other cases too. I mean, I believe if anybody would sit down, if anybody wants to know the truth about this, they need to do their own research and they'll figure it out eventually. Whatever path that's going to be, whatever path that person takes. If somebody wants to know whether there's a non-human intelligent presence on this planet or not, they could research this subject themselves, and they will know by the time they're done that, okay, yes, there's most certainly something here. And all of this nonsense, all of this noise that we've been getting from the government, as well as from the debunkers over the decades, means absolutely nothing. All these people have been lying. But I think everyone deserves to know why the government's not telling you the truth. And we're going to go through different reasons. I have a list of reasons, so we're going to go through them one by one. Okay, let's start with the first one here. Number one, the potential of successfully reverse engineering any recovered craft that was manufactured by non-human intelligence. That's one of the biggest reasons here, right? It is believed that the United States, as well as countries such as China and Russia, have recovered crashed UFOs, and all of them are working diligently to determine how they operate. The country that successfully is capable of duplicating the technology could potentially take control of the planet. Yes, that's one of the reasons why they're covering this up and why they don't want to talk about it. For one thing, I do believe that if the United States was going to actually disclose the truth about this, there's going to have to be other countries involved, and probably even some of our enemies, right? I would have to believe that other countries that we traditionally view as enemies, such as Russia, China, it's not just going to be the UK and Australia and countries like that. It's not just going to be our NATO allies, right? It's going to be other countries that we view as somewhat as enemies, like Russia, right? Now China, okay, but at the same time, I think that I think it would have to be coordinated between the countries, because if one big country is going to tell the truth, there's going to have to be other countries doing the same thing, I would have to imagine, at the same time. Because if the United States comes out with the truth, say, which they will not disclose the truth, but say they did, right? Then all of a sudden, all these other countries are going to be like, what the hell are you doing, man? You should have let us know so we could tell our people. Now we're going to have to either tell them that you're lying or that you're telling the truth when maybe we weren't ready to tell our people the truth. So there's a lot of different international political considerations that would have to be considered before any sort of disclosure. But it's not going to happen anyway. The United States, all this, we're going to get more stuff. But guess what? I would have to imagine that any stuff that we get, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but any stuff that we're going to get is just going to be basically the same kind of stuff we just got. We're not going to get any sort of disclose. We're not going to get them telling us the truth that they have recovered alien craft and non-human intelligent biological material. They're not going to tell us that. They're just not going to do it. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, number two. If the non human intelligence decides to attack us, it is highly likely that our present technology would not provide a good deterrent, hence the need for secrecy. No military in the world wants to admit that its weapons are useless against the advanced technology possessed by the non human intelligent presence on Earth. Yes. That's a big reason, right? It's a big, big reason, right? I mean, these things could run rings around our aircraft, right? We can't do anything about it, right? If they wanted to do something about it, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do against the technology that they have? They have craft that could defy gravity as far as we could see, right? I mean, so we don't have that, so they're gonna be in a better position if something were to happen. And we've already lost planes over the years. You read books by like Stanton Friedman, he talks about that. I mean, there were jets that were scrambled over the decades to try to shoot these things down, and they never returned. That's because they were disintegrated in some cases. The government doesn't want to tell you about that. They don't want to tell you that they're impotent against this invading force of non-human intelligent beings, that we have absolutely no chance against them, right? Why do you think they don't want to talk about the Las Vegas case? They don't want to admit to that. They don't want to tell the people out there, well, hey, yeah, something could drop out of the sky at any moment. There's nothing we can do about it. Yeah, they can land on your property and there's nothing you can do about it. Go try, and if you try to shoot them, for all you know, they might do something to you, and then you're going to be the one who's dead, right? So they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. So that's another reason. You deserve to know why they're keeping this a secret from you. Okay, let's move on to reason number 3. Disclosure could cause a worldwide panic because those in control would be incapable of providing answers to many of the questions that certainly would be posed once it's admitted that there's a non-human intelligence here. Yes. There would be so many different questions that they would not be able to provide answers to. For instance, could you tell us about the alien abduction stories? Is that true? What do you know about that? What about all these cattle mutilations? Could you talk about that? What about this alleged alien hybridization program? Are they really taking our biological material, taking sperm from men and eggs from women and creating half human, half alien creatures and sprinkling them out amongst us? And we don't even know they look just like us? Could you tell us all about that? See, that's one of the problems that they're going to have. They don't want to talk about this. How are they supposed to tell the people about this, right? They're not going to have an answer to it, right? They're not going to know what to say. So once they cross the line, no matter what they say, if they were to tell the world, right, yeah, there's a non-human intelligent presence here, and we recovered some of their craft, and we have some of their alien bodies on ice. Some of them survived, and but then they died shortly thereafter, and this is what we know. Okay, and that's all they're going to provide you, right? If they were to disclose that truth, but then what happens after that? Then there's other questions, the hybridization questions, the alien implant questions. Are they going to have any answers to that? No, they're not going to have any answers to any of these things. I would have to imagine they're not. They don't even know. They're probably not even sure what's really going on here. They're probably. I know that they would have to know more than we know out here in the public, right? But I would bet you that they're probably just as much in the dark as we are for the most part. So yeah, that's another issue. So yeah, there's an issue that they're concerned about, that it might cause some sort of a panic because they're not going to have answers to a lot of the questions, and people are just going to start making a lot of assumptions. A lot of us in this community already have made those assumptions, and we deal with it, but they're afraid that the people who haven't been thinking about this at all are all of a sudden going to be freaked out totally. So that's why they have to keep it a secret. All right, moving on to number 4. The late UFO researcher Stanton Friedman stated in his writings that, regardless how carefully a disclosure is made, mental hospital admissions would rise and the stock market would fall because of the uncertainty disclosure brings. He also opined that many people across the globe would begin to consider themselves as Earthlings rather than Americans, British, Australian, Canadian, Russian, etc. Here's a direct quote from Friedman. He said, "This is what he wrote. I can't think of any national government that would want its citizens to owe their primary allegiance to the planet instead of that individual government. Nationalism is the only game in town. People in power have a nasty habit of wanting to stay in power." Yes. A lot of people on this planet would start considering themselves as Earthlings, and the nationalism aspect would start dwindling. That's one of their concerns. Whether that would happen or not, I don't know, but that's one of the things that Stanton Friedman said, and I'm sure it is something that the secrecy group considers as they continue to keep this a secret from the rest of us. All right, number 5. Disclosure would not jibe with the teachings of some religions. Leaders of some Christian fundamentalist organizations, for example, already do not accept the reality that there is a non human intelligence here with us on Earth. Many evangelical leaders rely on massive contributions from their followers to purchase mansions, private jets, yachts, and fancy cars. Disclosure serves as a threat to the lifestyle of these people, as it would cause many of their flock to suffer cognitive dissonance and eventually lead to a reduction in donations. There's a lot of people in these fundamentalist Christian organizations, the ones that bleed their flock, bleed their followers for everything they got, right? So they could have as much money as possible. Some of them close to being billionaires. Some of them are billionaires, from what I understand, right? And we know this because just recently there was, I just saw an article the other day. Here's what the headline reads. This is from Vox. Christian leaders in the United States after the release of files on UFOs. They may be fallen angels, but they're not aliens. Okay. And let's just read some of the comments here in this article. This was some of the comments that these evangelical leaders had made after the release of those recent files. Of course, those recent files did not represent disclosure, and there's no evidence in there really to say that this is non-human intelligence, right? But anyway, here's one. Jeremiah Johnston, head of the Christian Thinkers Society, stated that he was not convinced by the published footage and rejected the idea that they proved the existence of aliens. And here's a direct quote from this guy. He says, "If aliens really exist, these vague images are not proof," he wrote, adding that the Bible has spoken for thousands of years of intelligent beings that people know as angels, spirit powers, or demons. According to him, the reported phenomena can be divided into four categories: misinterpreted objects, secret human technologies, angelic activities, and demonic activities. Johnston argued that the Bible clearly describes the existence of a spiritual world that also intervenes in physical reality. I disagree with that. This has nothing to do with any of this stuff, right? These are just people that they cherry pick whatever they want from the Bible. They use it to make a lot of money, and that's their game, okay? That's what this is. I know there's some people out there who will throw every dime they have at people like this. I don't know why they're doing that. You're stupid. That's why you're doing it, I guess, right? But see, they're not gonna, they can't go there because they've been saying for years that humans are the only intelligent species in the universe, right? That God's only created us. So that does not work for these people. That does not work for whatever they're trying to teach. So they're not going to like it, right? And that's going to cause cognitive dissonance for some of their followers. And they'll lose money. Here's another guy. Pastor Greg Laurie of Harvest Christian Fellowship in California also expressed skepticism about alien theories. And here's a direct quote from him. He says, "What we saw didn't make me believe we're not alone in the universe," he wrote on the X network. Laurie added that modern society has been programmed by science fiction films to immediately interpret any unexplained phenomenon in the sky as a visit from extraterrestrials. I actually agree with him a little bit on that one because there are some people out there who, whatever they see in the sky, they attribute it to aliens. I've met people like that, actually. And here was another comment from him. He says, "What if the best explanation is not extraterrestrial, but extra-dimensional? What if what we see comes from another spiritual world and not from another planet?" he stated. The two pastors also referred to the biblical descriptions of the prophet Ezekiel, arguing that some of the phenomena described in the Bible would be considered today as unidentified flying objects. So some of the things these guys talk about, I do agree with. However, and I'm not saying that these are the ones. I'm talking about like the Kenneth Copelands out there. When I was talking about the greedy ones, the ones with the more yachts and things like that. I'm talking about like the Kenneth Copelands one. That's that one guy who looks like he's actual a demon himself wearing a human skin suit. Okay, that's the guy. That's the kind I'm talking about. I don't know about these guys here. I just know that there is a segment of these televangelist types that they're just in it for the dough, folks. They're just in it for they're taking you for a ride. Sorry to tell you, right? But that's just how it is, right? Okay, let's get back to. So basically, what I'm saying here is that, these. There's going to be some people, some religions they're not going to like this, and it's going to affect some people in a negative fashion. They're going to have to rethink their position when it comes to God and on their faith. Just some minor adjustments, I think, for most people. Other people, not so much. They'll have big time issues with it. Okay, number 6, there would be economic chaos because after disclosure, people would demand that those in power use the discoveries to move us away from oil, coal, and gas. The energy companies, which continue to bleed the world population of most of its money, do not want to lose the power they presently have. Yes, don't know if you've seen the gas prices recently, but let me tell you something. These oil executives, they are loving every second of it. They are bleeding us dry, folks. They're bleeding us dry, and they love it. And if there was disclosure, that means people would be demanding, hey, these objects are flying around with a different sort of power source. We should be using that sort of power so we could use that for our transportation too, instead of spending all this money on oil all the time. We should have, where's element 115 at, right? Yeah, a lot of people would be demanding changes to the way we operate. A lot of us want to move away from gas, especially with the prices they're charging these days. It's outrageous. All right, number 7, disclosure would mean that people who have been pulling the strings of the cover-up would finally have to admit that the government has been lying to the public for 80 years. For some of the gatekeepers, concerns of lawsuits, scandal, and prison are obvious thoughts that race through their minds whenever the word disclosure is tossed about. Oh, you better believe it. I guarantee you there's people behind the scenes who are scared out of their gourds about disclosure happening. They don't want to even think about it, but they probably at the same time feel pretty comfortable that it's never going to happen because they have control of the situation. And they have control of the situation. The fear that they have is part of why they still maintain that control. They don't want to ever let it go, right? Because once it gets let go, there's going to be fingers getting pointed at certain people. We don't even know who they are right now, for the most part, right? But when it does happen, there's going to be people pointing fingers. I don't really care, to be quite honest with you. I just want to get to disclosure. Like I've stated before in the past, right? This was started by people who are dead. This whole cover-up began in 1947. All those people who were there at that time, they're dead. The original Majestic 12 group, right, which I believe did exist, they're all dead. All of those guys, the people who came up with the idea to keep this a secret from the public, they've been dead for a long time. It started there, and it was just passed on, grandfathered down through the generations to different people who, members of the aerospace companies and the defense contractors and some people in the Pentagon, they're all together on this one, right? And it's been handed down. So I say give them a pass, except for the ones who are guilty of murder, right? We need to figure out if any of these people who disappeared or turned up dead recently, the reason, we need to find out the reasons behind that. And if there are people responsible for that, they need to be held accountable. As for the people who are covering this up, I think we give them amnesty. That's what I think, and just move on. It was a crime that started a long time ago by people who are dead, and these people were they were brought in later on. That's why I say let them go for now. The murderers, though, they got to go to jail. But I would have to imagine that this is the kind of stuff that runs through their head. They don't like the idea of disclosure because they know there's going to be lawsuits. I mean, just think about the people who were threatened. There's going to be lawsuits against the government when disclosure happens. Think about when the Roswell incident happened, for instance, in 1947, there were actual citizens who were threatened. There's no question about that. And I would have to, a lot of these people are dead, right? The people, yeah, I think actually all of them that talked about being threatened are all dead at this point, but they still have families, right? And those families might be seeking retribution for what happened to their relatives who are no longer with us, the ones who were threatened by people within the government about this, whether they could prove it or not. But here's the thing. A lot of them did have there were a lot of witnesses to the threats back then. And there have been people threatened throughout I just heard Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp talk about how they get threatened on a regular basis, how the whistleblowers are getting threatened on a regular basis. The people who are doing these threats, right? Those are the people who are responsible for threats and murder and disappearances. They gotta face the piper, people. That's all I gotta say. Those are the kinds. But as far as everyone else, right, that's working on these projects secretly and they're read in on the project on the program at some point in the future, you got to let some of them go. I think you give some of them amnesty. All right, moving on. Number 8, those controlling the secret are concerned that disclosure could cause a reaction from the alien intelligence. Yeah, this is something that I've heard Lou Elizondo say over the years. Yeah, there could be a concern. I mean, what are they going to do? Like, say if the nations of the world, leaders from nations of the world finally, all together stand up on a podium and say, okay, we've been lying to you about this presence for all these decades, and this is the reason why we started to lie, because we needed to try to understand it better before we laid it out for you. This is what we know right now, and here's some of the evidence. We have recovered craft. We have dead alien bodies. We have video and film of some living aliens that we were able to save from some of these crashes, and you could check this out. But then what happens? I mean, there has to be a concern. Like, what if all of a sudden, if say there are, I believe that there's a possibility that there are these hybrids living among us. They're going to see this. All the aliens are going to know what we're up to all of a sudden. So is it possible that it causes them to do something who knows what? Right? That has to be a concern. That's actually a concern in my mind. I mean, if you were to actually have full disclosure, would the phenomenon react? That has to be something that they think about. So that's another reason for the cover up. All right, let's move on. Number 9. Disclosure would cause mainstream news outlets to appear ineffective for not digging the story out sooner, if not outright complicit in the cover-up. I say yes. I think that the mainstream media, for the most part, over the decades, when it comes to the UFO topic, they've been completely ineffective, completely useless. And sometimes I do believe complicit in some cases. I'm not sure. It just seems that way to me. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there is now evidence within the public domain that clearly shows that there is a non-human intelligent presence here, but yet the mainstream media just ignores it. They completely ignore it. Let me just tell you a story here. You know, back in 2024, when after Scott Roeder had made his analysis public with regard to the Las Vegas alien incident, I had been speaking with a reporter. Both him and I actually spoke to a reporter from Fox News Digital, and they actually ran 3 or 4 different articles on it. And that was probably the best mainstream news coverage that we got out of this. But after I had sent that letter to the Pentagon in June of 2024, laying it out, and I alerted Fox News Digital, the reporter from Fox News Digital about this, that was the end of it. No more talking about this case. It all went away. It all went away. You have to ask yourself, why? Why doesn't the government want to talk about that? Why is nobody talking about that? Because they know what it represents. That's why, folks. They don't want you people to know about this. They don't want them to know. If they're going to tell them, they want it to be them that lets them know, that to show them the proof, right? They don't want us to figure it out in the public like this. They don't want some regular old citizen to show the world, hey, look at this, look at this. But that's exactly what's been going on, folks. Just so you know. All right, moving on. Number 10. The secrecy group charged with maintaining the cover-up could have been infiltrated years ago by the non-human intelligence on Earth by alien hybrids, and now the NHI itself controls pertinent information related to the phenomenon. Oh yes, that's something to consider too. I mean, if it is true that there is a hybrid race of beings sprinkled out throughout the world here, right, and for purposes yet to be revealed, right? Maybe it's just because this is how they take us over from the inside out, right? They secretly take control of us by changing us, and maybe that's what it's all about. However, it's very possible that somehow over time, if these beings, apparently the hybrids have the ability to, control people telepathically, to make people do what they want them to do. That means it would be possible for some of these beings to work their way into the government, perhaps into the secret control group itself. And for all we know, the whole thing might be hybrids controlling this thing, and they're not going to let it out because they want to keep it secret too. Obviously, the non-human intelligent presence on this planet wants this to stay a secret. So there's another thing to think about. Okay, and I have one more bonus one for you here. Okay, number 11, bonus. They think you're stupid and incapable of handling the truth. While the likely old men who comprise the secrecy group sit in a secure location for their regular meetings, they are laughing at everyone else who's not part of their clique as they take long drags on fat imported Cuban cigars. Yeah, what do you think of that? They just think you're plain old stupid and you can't deal with it. While they're sitting in some dark room somewhere puffing away on big fat cigars from Cuba that somebody brought in illegally. Right? That's what's going on probably, folks. I'm sorry to tell you. They think that they're smart. They can deal with it, right? But you can't. They look at you as a bunch of morons. All of us. They think we're all stupid. That's another part of this. But I have to imagine, right? That's just the way human beings are, aren't they? I mean, let's just admit the truth here, right? That the reality is that that's just how people are, right? So if they have control of this and they're thinking about, we're not letting this go. We're not even going to tell them anything about it. I mean, they could have told us at least something. I understand the reasons for secrecy. I understand that, if you're trying to reverse engineer some recovered alien craft, you don't want to tell anybody what you're learning. I get that. I think everybody gets that. But the rest of it should not be covered up. They should at least tell us what's going on here. Talk about what you recovered. what the reality of the world is in which we live. They need to be doing this kind of stuff, but they won't do it, and they're continuing not to do it. All we've been getting recently, it's just a dog and pony show. Yeah, it was a lot of stuff they released, but what did we have in there? A lot of it was stuff that was already released in the past. It's nothing. It's just a dog and pony show. It's just something to placate you momentarily while they'll give us a few more months, and then they'll release some more stuff, and it's going to be the same old song and dance, I could assure you. I'm not going to fall for it again. I mean, the only way, to me, right, I'm at the point, seeing is believing. And a lot of the stuff, we just went through a lot of the reasons. You understand now why they would keep this a cover-up. There's no question in my mind. There's a lot of reasons that they have to keep this covered up. And these, what we talked about here, and there's probably other reasons too. If anybody has any other reasons, please provide them in the comments. But yeah, everyone deserves to know what's going on here. There's no question about it. We are not alone. The government is continuing to lie to us. Donald Trump, the president, they released this stuff. What did he say? He says, "What the hell is going on?" Well, no. That's, again, I've said this before. That's not. We're not. You shouldn't be looking to us for the answers, right? You're supposed to be telling us what's going on. That's what we're asking you. You don't just release stuff and there's no context or explanation for any of it, and you ask us what's going on. No. You know what's going on. The government knows what's going on. They're keeping it a secret, and that's all. That's the bottom line. We just laid out all the possible reasons. Could be all of the above, too, right? Could be elements of all of this stuff that we just talked about. And there's probably some other things I'm not even thinking of here. But anyway, there we go. You deserve to know why your government continues to lie to you about this alien presence on this planet. These are some of the reasons why. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me here today. Until next time.